Hello, welcome to part 2 of our Geese Basics Guide. Reminder that this is game version 4.2. In this part, we're going to talk more about strategy and go over some basic game plan elements, which will build on the essential tools we already went over. For Geese, this includes talking about his specials and meter game. Don't forget about all the resource links I mentioned in part 1. Those may be very useful to you, especially if you are brand new to the game. I've included those once again in the video description below. Enough of that, let's get going. Of all the 2D characters, Geese plays the most like an original Tekken character in that he revolves around strong, standard Tekken poke tools like his jabs, his down forward 1, down forward 4, a safe mid-ish check in standing 2, and some choice lows like sidestep 3, down 4, down 2, down 3, 1, etc. Many of these can link specials, forward 1 or forward 3, giving you strong poke string options as well. This accomplishes a couple of things. First, he has a strong sidestep, so you can set up a whiff both with your sidestep and backdash off of these tools. Typically you're hunting for 2 forward 1, since if you have meter, that's going to be most of their life bar, and maybe all of it if there's a wall, definitely all of it if you have rage and a wall, but still a nice combo even without those. Back 3-2 is another common option instead of standing 2 and a little quicker at I-14. Now the second thing, speaking of meter, is that these basic tools help you gain that meter, so you have to lean on them really hard to make sure that you build that explosive damage potential that meter gives you, which we'll talk about more in a few minutes. But to add to this, although his approach tools aren't the greatest, he doesn't have a running 3 or anything like that for instance, your opponents will also struggle to get away from you. Down forward 2 and standing 4 will stop sidestepping pretty quickly, plus a lot of his tools track one way or the other. For range, keep in mind that a lot of his moves already have good range to begin with, like standing 2, but his strings are really good at moving him forward. Think 1-2 and down forward 1-1, but also linking forward 1 or forward 3 from any of your link starters such as jab, standing 2, down 4, and so on does this as well. Geese's forward 1 and forward 3 are interesting because you can link them in the same way as a special, although they aren't specials, and you can link specials from forward 1, so it gives you some neat string options. We did not mention forward 1 in essential moves only because it's not something you really want to use as a neutral tool, but again, we'll talk about specials later. In any case, your goal with Geese is to set traps. Poke and then sidestep or backdash is the pretty simple option. Down 4 gives you a counter hit launch option for high crush, while your crouch jab and down 3-1 give you some neat counter hit options too. And things like forward 1+2 give you a launch option for low crushes. Otherwise, you can go for your parries. The high parry slams to the ground, the low parry goes right into a tailspin juggle, but the mid one gives you a free standing 2, so it offers the biggest potential reward. This is common if you have your back to the wall, since opponents are often going to try to get wall splats, which are normally mid moves, so you'll get a big splat combo. Regardless, his parries activate in a few frames, so they are common trap tools after your big block disadvantage moves like running 1, forward 1+2, down forward 2, and so on. When you're at range, you can play the fireball game and dictate the approach timing, or you can try to hunt for something like counter hit forward 4, which is a decent range tool and becomes safer when spaced well. Don't forget too that Geese has the 2D jump. He doesn't have quite the number of options as the other 2D characters, but you have a couple useful tools still. The fireballs can come in handy as a keep out or as a hedge. For example, you can do fireball after forward 1+2 to add some mind games there. Jump 4 tends to be the go-to non-special option. It has the biggest hitbox and the most consistent plus frames. You can get up to +7 on block or +17 on hit, so you can get free hits afterwards if it lands. Jump 2 can offer the same reward and is even a little faster, but it's a little tougher to use because of the 2 hits. Since the jump hangs, you can also use it to get out of situations regular Tekken characters can't, at the risk of being floated a little easier. As a final note, it's impossible to fully teach fundamentals in a guide such as this, since you learn these skills over time. But as a quick ending tip to this section, try to take advantage of the gray area between +4 and -4 with your movement and counter hit tools. Then play close attention to your opponent's timing and habits to find your way in. Overall, play patient and play deliberate. This is the way. Now for the fun stuff. First, let's chat about his specials. His quarter circle forward 1 and 2 are his fireballs. Very similar to Eliza, they roll across the ground, which can make them tougher to deal with in some respect, but still makes them vulnerable to jumping attacks. They're still crucial for controlling the match and gaining opportunities to sneak in. He can also do them in the air or after forward 1+2, although the input changes to quarter circle back. His crouch dash 1 and 2 are his dragon punches, or simply DP for short. Geese's DP is a slicer, and sadly the non-max slicers are mostly juggle fillers. They are safe, but they're 2 hits and the second hit is high. Not to mention the first hit is a special mid, so you can't even use it for mix-up purposes. Sadly, they're also on the slower side and no invincibility, so you can't use them as anti-buttons like you would with the other 2D characters. His half circle back 3 and 4 shoulder dashes are his power crushes. The 3 is safe but ends high. The 4 ends mid but is unsafe. Both will knock down splat. Again, these start as special mids. Finally, quarter circle back 1 and 2 are his palms. Although they are highs, aside from his fireballs, you're likely to see these the most. Quarter circle back 1 is a single hit knockdown splatter but unsafe, although it's fast, so without anything extra happening like a meter cancel or a counter hit, it's usually the only special you can link in tight windows like from a jab. Quarter circle back 2 is still unsafe, but it's the start of a string of which there are 3 enders. Quarter circle back 2-1 is the only one that is a natural combo, be it counter hit or normal hit, since quarter circle back 2-3 and 2-4 are too slow to link like that. Instead, those 2 options work like a mix-up, with the 3 ender being a safe knockdown mid and the 4 ender being an unsafe knockdown low. It should be noted that the 4 ender is just a tad slower than the 3 ender, so it's not a true mix-up, but the defensive timing is tight enough that it will still operate like a mix-up against the vast majority of players. That being said, quarter circle back 2-3 is the most common ender just because it's a safe mid, but they all have their use. Now, Geese does have EX versions of all of these. However, his meter works a little differently than the other 2D characters. Instead of being able to burn meter to make one specific attack better, he has to burn a full bar, of which he can have up to 3, and then he enters his max mode for a set period of time. He is then allowed as many EX moves as possible within that time limit, although using those moves will eat a little bit of meter, thus decreasing it faster. If you've watched Akuma or Eliza at all, Geese's max moves are going to feel familiar. His max fireball is a much safer, more damaging version, which he can also do airborne or from forward 1+2. His max shoulder dash is a much safer version of the mid ender, and again a little more damage. His max palm, because a tad safer but is still punishable, rather it's the string enders from the palm that get the real buffs. The 1 ender is not only safe but significantly so, and it becomes a wall bounce. So let's say you're not quite close enough for the shoulder dash specials to wall splat, this allows you to still get your juggle from farther out. The 3 and 4 enders are the same frame wise, but they both become normal hit launchers, so the reward on that mix up increases a lot. And finally, the max slicer becomes a legit launcher on normal hit. It's still a special mid followed by a high, but it allows you to launch in the open from a link like off 2 forward 1. In other words, your max specials give you a combination of better pressure and reward. Although you can activate max mode manually with 1+2+4, what makes max mode scary is that you can activate it by linking it from certain moves, much like Akuma's FADC or Eliza's Moonglide cancel. From these moves, simply press 1+2 and you'll use 1 bar of meter to activate max mode, which will also automatically send you into a dash. That dash cancel is important since it allows moves like back 3-2 to become launchers. So not only do your max specials give you better combo versatility, you also straight up gain the ability to launch at certain frames. With a max cancel, you have a true I-14 launcher in back 3-2, and whether or not you're already in max mode or decide to max cancel, standing 2 becomes your I-15 launcher. He cannot launch at these speeds without meter, so this is really important. In fact, unless you're a god with instant while standing 3, you won't really be launch punishing from standing at all unless you have that meter. It's both a strength and a weakness. Your standing punishing will be fairly weak until you have meter, but once you have that meter, your damage will skyrocket. Doing 2 forward 1 max cancel, 2 forward 1 into max slicer is easy peasy compared to Akuma's FADC, and you're getting just as much damage. This is why hunting for things like sidestep standing 2 is so strong. You also gain some other nasty abilities. For example, counter hit crouch jab into max slicer is a natural combo like we mentioned in essential moves, so you get a 10 frame counter hit launcher in max mode. Also, as a quick note, your most common max cancelable moves are going to be jab, forward 3 or any string variation of it, back 3-2 and forward 1. You can max cancel from standing 2, but if you're going to do that, you might as well do 2 forward 1 since there's only upside to that. that. And then also note that you can special link jab, forward 1, and standing 2, in addition to crouch jab, down 3 1, down 4, and while standing 1. Otherwise, you also have 2 supers that you can use your meter for. Quarter circle forward, 1+2 is your super fireball, usually reserved as a juggle ender since you can get some nasty combos with it. An easy example is after 1+2 on hit, and you recover fast enough, just barely, in these situations for a free running 1 after. But if you want a super easy way to do this too, simply doing 1-2-1-2 will activate it without having to do the double quarter circle forward. The other super is Raging Storm, which you can do as down back, half circle back, down forward 1+2. It's not a fun input, but thankfully it has a large buffer window, so unless you're trying to do it from very tight windows, it's not that bad. You'll see this a lot at the wall since it sends your opponent right to the top, and you recover fast enough to get extra wall hits, so it's a lot of damage. And like the Fireball super, you can also get it after certain knockdowns, like quarter circle back 2-1. In any case, the barrier to entry for using meter is a lot lower for Geese than the other 2D characters, and since you're going to be playing basic, fundamental Tekken otherwise, it hopefully shouldn't feel too big of a challenge to master. As always, we'll start by recommending Applay. It's the best quick info resource out there. Once you start getting comfortable with Tekken and you want to pick up a character on the fly, there's nothing better than this. Our first recommendation is going to be Chikurin, the well-known Japanese player. There is a ton to watch of his Geese given how many big events he's been to and how deep he tends to get in those tournaments. It doesn't seem that he streams much, so YouTube is your best bet here. Next is Pekos, another well-known Japanese player. You should watch him for the exact same reasons as Chikurin. He does stream, but on a Japanese streaming site, so again, YouTube might be the better resource if you can't read Japanese, although you can probably still guess your way through that site. Now jumping to another part of the world, this time a well-known US player, Trungy. He did a Teach Me vid with King J, so you can hear from him directly his thoughts on the character. Although he has a Twitch, once again, it doesn't seem that he streams much, so YouTube will be the better source. And lastly, we'll recommend a Korean player, Meo-IL. He has his own YouTube channel, and you can find plenty of sets outside of that. He does stream, but it's on Afrika, so again, it can be tricky if you don't read or speak Korean. But he has participated in plenty of events that have been streamed on Twitch in English, which includes a recent Tekken Online Challenge event, so lots out there to watch of him. And as usual, don't take this list as final. Geese is a popular character, so this list is just to get you started. So search around and you'll find more. This brings us to the end of our guide. If you want to play both standard Tekken with a strong mix of 2D elements, Geese is likely going to be your flavor. The one big thing to keep in mind with Geese is that his weak areas are largely due to meter reliance. For instance, the vast majority of Tekken characters can launch standing at 14 or 15 frames, and Geese can too, but only with meter. In fact, he gets both of those once he has meter. He also has to lean heavily on things like Fireball and Forward 4 in order to make his way in. But in general, the first round or two are going to mostly be you trying to get meter, but if you win those early rounds before getting meter, consider yourself ahead. Otherwise, Geese is essentially an easier version of Akuma. He lacks certain scare factor tools like a knockdown down 4 and a clean hit down 3, but his max cancels are so much easier than Akuma's FADC. Even after some nerfs, Geese is still one of the better characters in the game. So keep at it, and I wish you the best of luck in your training. And with that, thanks for checking out this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications here on YouTube so that you get alerted when a new video drops. I also have Twitch and Twitter links down below. Lastly, big thank you to our patrons, Tato, Overhaul, and XMRT. The more support we have, the more resources we can devote to channel content. So again, thank you to those three and everyone that considers supporting the Patreon. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.